Okay, welcome to the next lesson. And now we're going to deal with the rocks as well. I'm going to start with this one, and I'm going for a look like this. And these are the main references that I'm going for. And these are some mosses, and these are some colors that I can pick from. And normally when you're going for references, try to pick up from images that are not manipulated so much. For example, this image doesn't have any post-processing, but this one, you see, it has a lot of post-processing, and colors are really distorted and have a lot of contrast and things in them. And for example, this one also, you see, it has a lot of post-processing and color corrections and things like that. If you want to go for references, go for something like this, which really doesn't have any color correction at all. So let's go for these, and I'm going to pick the main colors from this because this is the main look that I'm going for. And I'm going for dark and a bit of saturated patches with a bit of moss and things like that. Okay, let's bring it here so that we have a better place to work and try to remove all of them. Okay, now we have this one, and it's time to start the layering process. So for the first one, I'm going for the color and the roughness to define the main color of the rock. So let's go for something dark because it's dark and doesn't have a lot of color value, just like the previous ones where we were creating the sand kit. It was something yellowish, but this one is quite neutral and towards the dark. So for the roughness, let's make it pretty rough, something like this. And this is the base that we're going to build upon. Okay, let's make it a bit rougher, a bit, excuse me, a bit specular. Okay, now for the color, let's pick up from here. Okay, this is good. I'm going to make this one as the base and I start layering on top of that. And as always, I'm going to layer on top of layer to create what I want. So for this one, let's go for roughness and color only, and pick the color something really obvious. This is annoying my eyes, so I'm bringing it down. So something like this, okay? Because I'm only going to use this one for knowing which parts are going to get used, okay? And add a fill, and I'm going to copy this layer, okay? Go to the fill and start to layer procedurals on top of procedurals, okay? Let's pick up from procedural textures. This one already started to add a good bit of color variation in there. And I'm going to first do the procedurals, and then later on we will do the smart masking to make it localized as well. And first I'm going for big shapes. You see this one does a quiet change in the texture. So let's see what we can do with the balance. This is good. And now I'm going to change the color and the roughness as well. Okay, this one is adding a good amount of color variation. So let's make this one a bit more specular because having a color like this will really look like dirt. If you bring the roughness up, it really becomes dirt. So I'm not making it so roughy. Okay, this one is good. And now let's go for other procedurals as well. I'm selecting them one by one, testing them to see which I will like and which I really do not like. And mainly I'm going for things that add so much. Okay, this one is good as well. Let's pick a color from here. You see, adding a bit of whiteness into here makes it look like being washed away by something. Okay, this one is alright as well, and I'm really starting to like this. You see, even without adding so much detail, because the mesh is so detailed, we are getting a lot of things. Okay, let's make this one a bit rougher. And right away I'm going to add the sharpness that we normally add to our textures. So pass through and add a filter and select sharpness. Okay, right away it's starting to look good, but I need to bring it down more because it's too noisy for now. Okay, this one is good, halfway. Now let's go and start to procedural this one out. Or even instead of going here and try to always select from here, I can go in this and go into this texture section and start to see the procedurals in here. This way it's a lot faster and I'm seeing the result right away, and I really do not have to select each and every one every time so that they load and wait. So it's a bit of time saver and it's a good technique to use. And I always have them in mind and I can see what they do right away. So let's pick here and bring it right away to here. Okay, another good one. And now I'm trying to make the base color as rich as possible. So let's pick this one from. Okay, this one is good, but we need to make it a bit darker. Let's go for something like this. I want it to be darker. Okay, now let's bring this one and bring it down more. I want to add more darkness to it. And now you see the procedurals start to make the base color rich, but in order to ultimately make it stronger, we need to add those smart masks in the end and make it rougher a bit. Okay, I'm going to procedural this one out. And we have these, and that's a real time saver. And I'm seeing the procedurals right away, and I do not have to select them one by one and test them. I have these and I can see them right away what they do. Okay, this one is pretty huge. Let's pick another color, and I might change this depending on the contribution that it does to the surface. Okay, this one is all right. I need to make it a bit rougher, and I can already add a bit of height. Let's see what adding a bit of height does on this one. And let's see before and after the height. Okay, it's all right. And again, bring this and also save the file. I do not want to lose a lot of progress just like the previous one. And again, I'm telling you that I have kept a couple of files from this and I'm saving constantly on them. So let's give this one a procedural. Now let's use this. No, I'm only going for those ones that have a lot of contrast in them and a lot of value changes. Let's use this one and adding a lot of dirt swatches in there. Let's pick a color, and I can also use these ones as well. This one has a good range of color value. So let's pick up from here. Okay, the color made, but I'm going to manipulate the mask a bit because I really do not want to affect the whole place. I'm going to make the contrast sharper a bit. And you see, by making the contrast sharper, I'm localizing it to some places and removing from other places as well. You see, let me see it before contrast and after the contrast. It makes it stronger on some parts and lesser on some parts as well. So on this one is huge and I really do not want it to be like this. So let's pick up another fill and I'm going to multiply this on top of that. Or let's use subtract. Let's use multiply. And now let's see the mask. It's a bit more subtler and I really need to add another procedural, add a fill layer, and in here use one of these, this one, and let's rotate it. Rotate it 90 degrees, and I'm going to multiply this one on top of that one to wash the effect a lot more. Okay, it's a lot better. Okay, now it's starting to look good. We have the value changes from dark to bright and color swatches and everything ready. So let's start to layer this one out. Again, go to fill layer, and I'm going to use this procedural. It started to look good. And I'm going to bring the contrast, bring the balance instead. Bring the balance down, and this one adds a bit of color to that. So again, let's go and pick from these colors. So let's change the reference and go for this one. Let me see what I can select from this. Although I really recommend that you pick a handful of selection of textures and go with them. You see, I have a pretty much low amount of references that I can use from, and this makes sure that I have consistency all across. And if you try to pick the colors from so many textures, you're not really going to get a lot of consistency. You're going to get a lot of new things, but the consistency isn't really one of them. So just try to add a bit of greenish to this. For example, this being the moss or things like that. Of course, later on I might add the moss to the crevices, but this one is good for adding those colors and make it a bit shinier, because the moss is a bit more shinier than the rock. Now let's use this. It's pretty strong, and I'm going to invert that. Okay, now let's give it color, and I'm going for the main reference that I had, and let's use here to see. Let's go back and try to pick a color from here. One of them was doing pretty good. Let's select this one, although this one isn't so real. I'm going for something dark. Okay, this one looks good, but I need to pick another color. Let's go here, and because this is in the shadows, there's a bit of blue tone in all of the colors, and I should have picked something else up, but we're doing fine with this. Let's pick up from here, and this one looks alright, but overall I need to make the mask a bit less pronounced. Okay, like this one, but this one really looks like color, looks like a patch of color being applied to it. I'm going for a darker color. Let's add a filter and contrast and luminosity. Let me see what I can add to it. Luminosity down and contrast up. Okay, this is now better, and we're going to bury this under heavy layers of procedural. Let's select this. No, this one is good later on for adding some patches of moss that we can add there. but also we need to tile that so much. For example, let's go for 5 and add the mouse patches there. But for the mouse, I'm going to do that later on, so I'm not going to use that. So on this one, let's use this. No, it's a game about selecting different procedurals and see which one works and which one doesn't. And after that, you really will get a good result that is looking alright and is rich in terms of the base color, normal, roughness, and anything. So this one is alright. Let's pick from here. Okay, very good. And in here also we're getting a good color variation. And this is the base color and it's looking alright. But we need to make it richer. Now we are adding the medium details later on. Adding the small details will make it pop up even more. Okay, now let's pick a color from here. Yeah, looks like the edges have been damaged and it's a good thing. Let's make it rougher. Okay, just take a look at the base color and try to continue adding procedurals. No, this one not as well. And it's subjective. Some of them work and some of them don't. This is too low. This is too high. This one is good. Let's add a bit of damage in there. I'm going to activate the height as well and bring that down. You see, already started to go down. And for the color, let's make it brighter because these places tend to be brighter because they have been hit, but it's too strong in here. Let me add a paint. Let me go to the mask, and on top of this procedural I'm going to add a paint and manually paint some of that away. But let's not use the paint because I'm going to make a procedural out of this, a smart mask. The paint doesn't really work with a smart mask that well. But let's bring the balance down. This one is alright. And I need to adjust the color and make it darker a bit because it's too bright. And adjust the height as well because it's too much going there down. Okay, alright. And after these, we will add the smart masks. We'll add all kinds of curvature and edge damage and things like that, and we'll make it really perfectly rock thing. Okay, this one again. And let's use this one to see what it does. Okay, good patches of color. But after this one, I'm going to add a filter and warp it a bit because it looks a bit too CG. Okay, something like this is a lot better. And for the color, let's pick up one of these ones. See, even in here, there's something like that happening. But I really want to make the effect less. So let's go to here and add another procedural, add a fill layer, and try to use this one and multiply it against that, and make the multiply lesser to make that a bit more prominent. Okay, this one is good. And overall, I'm really happy with the direction that we're going in. But we need to bring this color down a bit. It's too shiny. Now let's look at the base color, and it's fine. Now there's nothing more really that we can try on. Now let's go and add those smart masks to make it really based on the mesh. So I'm going to select these all, Control G to group them, and call them procedurals. Okay, and add yet another group, and on this one I'm going to call it smart masks or mesh mask, or basically whatever you want, and keep the sharpen at the top. So I'm going to remove this fill because I only need the color and roughness data with a black mask so that I can drag this one into. Okay, let's select one of these to see what we come up with. And you see these are really bringing this one to a new level, and they are using the sculpting data and the mesh data that we have added there, and they really make it fine. But it's overall too strong. Let's go in the masking section and try to bring the global balance down. Okay, something like this, but in this area it's a bit too strong. Let me think what I'm going to use this one for. Let's pick one of these colors to see where this one is going to be used. This one is good for some damages. I'm going to add, let's add a bit of white color. Okay, something like this. And you see, because it's based on the sculpting data, it's bringing it to a new level. And overall, again, it's too strong. Let's bring it down just a bit. Now it's reading a lot better. So let's go again and try to apply the color with this one. Again, this one is cavity but has some edge information as well. So let's go to the mask and bring the level down so much. And this one highlights the edges, and I can give this one a darker color. Of course, later on we will make the edges a bit whiter to highlight them for composition. Okay, now let's add another, and I start to check these, and I'm making this one darker as well. Let's see if a darker value reads well. Yeah, it's doing all right. Another one, and let's see this. No, this one isn't really. This one as well. And this one is selecting the darker parts, which is all right. And let's pick the color from these areas. And I can make this one moss as well. It's doing a good read for the moss. Yeah, let's make it darker a bit. Let's go for darker green. Okay, this one is good. And adding a bit of moss on top of that, okay? Let's go for another one. No, this is not really. And we have a bit of texture stretching in here, which isn't really a problem. It's not going to be seen anyway. Okay, let's use other ones. A good overall dirt that is based on the geometry. So I'm loving that. Let's pick from here instead. Okay, this one is good, but let's bring it down to make the moss more obvious. And let's see this dusty edge. And this is going to give the edges a bit of highlight. Let's make it, I believe, a darker color would do. And let's make the effect stronger. Yeah, this one is looking all right. You see, we have a bit of supporting black color, and later on we will select the edges and give them a whiter color. So let's use this. No, this one is repetitive. No. This one is randomly adding some colors. Yeah, I love that. Let's give this one also a dark color. Or a white color. Yeah, the white color is doing a lot better. You see, it's starting to look really like the rock. Okay, now let's add some other more. And this one needs to be dark as well. And let's use some more. Let's see what this one does. It really highlights the edges. And I'm going to make it dark, and later on select some of these edges from here and create a bit of lightness into that. So let's pick another dark color from here, but not too dark. Something just like this one is looking good. And I'm going to go to the mask and weaken the effect a bit. Just like this one. Okay. Now I need to add those edge highlights as well and call it done. Let's go for edges. And this is selecting these. I'm going to disable the sharpen for the first one. Let's remove the sharpen and bring the level down. Of course, I'm going to bring the weird contrast up so that we are able to select in between these areas. Okay, I'm going to give this one a lighter color to make the edges sink a bit. And this is what really happens in nature. The edges are really damaged. And I can make the effect a bit less stronger. Okay, this one is good. And now I feel like I'm happy with the color of the rock, and I can select these two folders, and with the sharpen effect, hit Control and G to group these, and I'm going to call it rock 01. and make a smart material out of that. Okay, let's hide this, and I'm going to export the textures of this one as well. Okay, let's go to export textures, and again I'm going to use this OpenGL, and on this one I'm going to use 4K and give it export direction as well. Everything is alright. Hit export, and this is the texture exported, I mean the base color, and we're getting good amount of data. And one thing that we can do to make it better, I can add a fill layer under everything and only apply the normal. And this one is rock blocky big. Let's search for the name blocky big and add a normal map. And every time you try to paste the normal map here, you get a stronger normal map. See, compare before and after, we get the normal map. Okay, I'm not really using this, let's leave it. And now since we have the smart material created, I'm going to delete it from here and apply it to others as well. This one is the medium, let's apply it, and done. Okay, it's looking all right. Looking good. And these are small ones and tiny ones as well, because they are from the same family. I really have no problem applying the texture on them. And this one done as well. And now I'm selecting these three to be exported, but I'm going to export them at 2K because 4K is going to be overkill on these three. And now hit export. Okay, done. And now let's delete the texture from all of these to save a bit of performance, and go for the cliff rocks, the layered rocks really. So let's apply it here to see. Okay, it's already starting to look very good, and I'm happy with it really. Very natural looking, and looking good from far away, and looking good from close up as well. So let's put the smart material on this one as well. Okay, all right, really all right. Or if you want to, you can really take this and just like the previous one, on top of everything, add add a paint layer and call this one HSL. Okay, and I'm going to bring it down the sharpness, make it pass through, and add contrast and luminosity. And on this one, let's bring the luminosity down. And this one makes some different color. Or let's add the hue saturation, add a filter, and in here, select the hue saturation. And you can control the lightness, saturation. Now this one is looking sci-fi. On some places, this might be a good color, but not here. Okay, let's pick up a color. Let's go for some of those brownish colors. Okay, something like this. And let's bring the color contrast and luminosity above that. Bring the luminosity here and give it a bit of darkness. you can really choose which one to use, and all of them would be fine. So let's disable this. I'm going to use this one because all of these rocks belong to the same area, and there's no point in making differentiations. So one more thing that you can do is adding another layer, bring the color up, and of course if the roughness if you want. So add a black mask and a fill layer, and I'm going to bring the curvature map or ambient occlusion map from this one. This is, let's copy the name, and in here search for, if you paste the masks, you paste the name, you're getting the bake map textures in here. So this one is the thickness map. Let's see the mask. No, the thickness isn't working all right. We can use AO as well. Okay, and the AO, I'm going to change the color to something like black, and on AO, because it's white on all of the areas, I'm going to make it reversed. So let's add a level and invert it so that it's available on crevices areas. And now come in here, before and after, it adds a bit of darkness to the edges, trying to make that a bit more like cheating a bit of depth into that. But because these two are neighboring and this is affecting the ambient occlusion on this one, I'm going to use curvature instead. So let's, and if you want to bake these, try to give some spaces so that no ambient occlusion, bake error, something like this happens. Because the bake, when it wants to bake, this one really blocks the sun. So give it a space so that it bakes better. So let's use the curvature instead. So this one is the curvature, and I can right away tell that it added a bit of depth into that. So let's make it rougher as well, and I can manipulate the curvature as well. So let's go for levels, invert. Now it's highlighting the edges and going for deep areas as well. So let's, on top of that, let's add another level and try to highlight these areas only. I'm going for the dark areas, which are the crevice areas. So let's make it a bit more contrasty. And now let's look at it. And now you see it added a bit of fake depth in there. So let's bring it down quite much. Okay, now we have a bit of faking the depth in there. So let's make it darker a bit. Yeah, it's now faking the depth a lot more, and in far areas it's looking right. So let's select this one, and I'm going for this big, and on top of everything I'm pasting this one. And now you see it's faking the depth on here. And one good thing to note is that you saw that we selected the bake texture of this one. You see on this one, on this medium ones that we created that, on this fill we selected the bake texture that belongs, you see, to the medium, and I pasted this one, and since that one was a bake texture, Substance has a good feature that if you bring that and copy that here, instead of using the previous bake texture, it's going to now use the bake texture from the mesh that I have here. And it's a good thing. You really do not have to turn it off and select the bake texture again. So if you want to give that a bit of bake masking, it's a good idea to use. So let's see before and after. You see it's adding a bit of depth into that. So I'm going to export both of these as 4K, and I feel like on this one I can really increase the depth as well, because you see the depth is only in here. I want to cover more from that. So let's go for levels, apply the mask. I'm going to be selecting a bit from the edges as well. So let's bring this one in here, select more, but try to cut a bit more from that. So you see now we have a lot more information in these areas, which is a good thing. Okay, it's now looking very good, and I'm going to do the same thing for all of those rocks that we exported as well. I'm going to select this because, let's see this before and after. You see this one is before and this one is after. You see there's a lot of separation in these areas, and it really took that to a new level. So let's take this one from here, and that is really a good hack, and I believe I'm going to do this from now on for every rock that I export. Okay, I'm really enjoying this process. So let's take this one and delete it and paste that. Okay, now we have a lot more separation in the colors. And one more thing that you can do is, instead of pasting only a simple fill layer in here, you can go and from this list of material select some of the materials. For example, let's select some of these concretes that have a bit of information in them. So let's select this one, and it overwrites the texture for you. Okay, it overwrites it on this one. You see now, instead of having a bit of black color, we have color information as well. So I'm going to alter the color, bring the luminosity down, because we want to fake the depth on this. Okay, this one is doing all right. And on this one as well, let's select this peak and select this, but I need to bring the luminosity down to make it really dark. Okay, now it fakes a lot more depth into that. And of course, you can go on and manipulate the mask as well if you want to. No, this one is all right, and covering all of the crevices. Okay, this one is all right. I'm going to copy this layer, and let me export these two in the first place. I'm going to deselect these and export these two, and I'm going to export them as 4K. Okay, hit export, and this is the base color that it had created. We have a lot of value differentiation, which makes it perfect. And in Unreal Engine, we might be forced to alter the color a bit. We import it in Unreal, and to see if there's everything right, and if it was wrong, we come back just like the log pieces and manipulate these colors. So I'm going to select this and copy on these ones as well. Let me first do on this big one to see what changes it makes. I'm copying the same. So you see, it's adding a lot more separation in the edge areas. But let's take this one and bring it top the sharpness. But overall, since this one isn't so deep, I'm going to manipulate the levels and make it less stronger, just adding some instead of adding a whole lot. So it's all right. This one is good. And now let's paste this one with the same setting on these ones as well, because these are from the same family. Every time I go and paste a smart material, this one, onto a mesh, it's converting the bake maps to that specific mesh. Okay, and now this one is alright as well. Let me see if I can change this one a bit more to suit this one. Now let's bring it to something like here. Okay, let's give those ones as well. And apply it on these ones. And they look alright. Okay, I'm going to now export these one by one. And again, I'm going to export this as 2K. And after that, we go to Blender and try to export the nanite meshes of each mesh separately into Unreal and try to start the kit bashing and material creation there. So it's Blender, and I'm going to import the low poly files that we gave to Substance. And these are these files: the rock kit low and the beach low. And I'm going to import them and compare them against the size of the mannequin. And since everything is alright with them, including the pivot and the naming conventions and the materials as well, I'm going to select them and export them to Unreal Engine. Okay, this one is about beach, and let's go and bring the rock kit as well. I'm going to bring this one since we altered the material on a couple of those. Okay, this one is the rock as well, and everything is all right, and these ones are separated. And let's see about this one. This should be the same separated mesh as well. Yeah, it's looking all right, and everything is fine. And the only thing that we need to do is bringing up the batex, give it export direction, and accept. And since on all of these, let this mannequin is in here, don't want it. Just wanted it for seeing if the scaling and everything is right. Okay, now this should have the same material, it's all right. And these ones also should have the same material. All right. So I'm going to take them and one by one export them to Unreal, and then after that I import them and convert them to Nanite. And since all of them have the same material ID, I mean one material ID instead of having couples, I'm going with the same settings in here. Okay, just let's take them one by one and hit export. And depending on the size of the meshes, they might take lower or higher to export. And I'm going to repeat the same process until all of them have been exported. And I believe if you take multiple ones and hit export, it's going to export all together. So that's a great idea. And sometimes it didn't work. When I tried to select a couple of meshes and hit export, it gave me error. But I believe since I have updated, I'm no longer getting that problem. So let's select these two as well, hit export. And these are smaller ones together as well. And finally this one. Okay, now it's telling that we have separated these. You see all of them are single meshes, and we have 22 static meshes in the scene present. And on the export folder we have 22 as well, and it means that we have exported perfectly, and taking all of them and hitting export works as well. I didn't know about it and just found out. And the next step is to bring up Unreal. I'm going to create empty scene so that we do not create any burden on the performance. And on the meshes in here, let's create a folder and call it landscape. And let's import. And I'm going to take all of them since those are relatively small. Okay, hit open. And for vertex color, we do not need the vertex color. I'm going to hit build nanite and make sure that the generate light map is turned off. Okay, and now hit imports all. It's going to take a bit to calculate the meshes and convert them into nanite at the same time. Okay, they got imported, and now let's test them, drag them into the scene, and go into nanite visualization overview, and you see everything is nanite in here. Okay, we're done. I'm going to save the scene out, and in the next lesson we will create the material for them, and as well as kit bashing and creating the landscape with them. Okay, see you there.